It's exhausting hearing you every week. He's the end of democracy. He's the end of democracy. It's exhausting. It's exhausting.
Don't try to switch it up now. Welcome to the club.
I think it's important to not be biased.
I'm not being biased.
No, you might not be aware of it, but I think you are being biased.
I am not. Even from the handshake, he ran from the handshake. He didn't want to shake her hand.
You're paid.
By the way, they said that was the
Charlamagne and Andrew Schulz find themselves in an interesting spot. For one, both of them have properties way bigger than Brilliant Idiots, but yet they still do a show together. Charlamagne's a mogul, has tons of deals on the table, and Andrew Schulz is a comedian who many people say is falling off, but still remains bigger than he's ever been. Charlamagne's protege is now probably his equal as far as visibility, and might be at odds with the public-facing persona Charlamagne has cultivated since they have been together. In this video, I'm going to break down a debate they had about the Kamala-Trump debate and how they might be at odds and probably shouldn't be together, as the two are pointing out the other one's flaws. And then later on in the video, I'm going to be breaking down another episode of Brilliant Idiots where they did something very interesting in regards to the Blank and Gigs controversy that took over the internet for the last couple weeks as far as podcasting news. First, let's talk about this Trump debate with Kamala that they discussed on the show. Now, this episode is a deep dive into how both men are out there trying to create the perceptions of themselves. First, Charlamagne is clearly of the Democratic Party. I mean, if I had to tell you who won this debate between Charlamagne and Andrew, Andrew clearly won it. And that is because he just had better points. He was a little bit more malleable. And for the most part, he was willing to be flexible when he was wrong. Whereas Charlamagne could not give an inch, which to me at least demonstrated that he was insecure on his point. But along the way in this debate, Andrew calls out Charlamagne's biases towards the Democratic Party, and even says that Charlamagne is paid by the Democrats. Now, that might seem crazy, but I think it's actually true in this case. Just judging from how Charlamagne debates this whole thing, it does look like he is a puppet of the Democratic Party. Not that there's anything wrong with being of either ideology. It's really hard to police what people believe in. But after this, you see a bunch of instances where Charla tries to cut Andrew off.
Wait for it.
No, before that.
Let me just get my point out, and then you tell me yours. Watch your
back away from your MAGA patriot leader. Don't you dare.
I hate you.
And I started to think, hey, man, I wonder how Andrew feels being cut off. This guy has risen through the ranks on the Flagrant 2. He has viciously cut people out of his show if they got too big for their britches, and even marginalized Akash, who once used to appear like a co-host, but now is a side character in a show that he was very heavily promoted on. So for Charlotte to cut him off, I wonder how long that dynamic can last. And also, Andrew is actually being critical of Trump.
We completely outclassed him in every single way, but most importantly, out-strategized him in the debate. I can say that objectively as someone who's not a Kamala supporter.
But even Charla tries to push back, and Andrew looks frustrated, causing Andrew to mock Charla, and Charla keeps stepping on Andrew's point. It's as if Charlamagne can't deal with the fact that he is not the A mic anymore. He's a co-mic, and he's trying to create kind of like a reverse Hannity and Combs. Y'all remember Hannity and Combs on Fox News? They used to get the ugly looking Democratic guy and then get the, kind of demure Republican dude who's like 6'3" and make the Democratic dude look like a geeky, nerdy loser. Well, I feel like at the beginning of this show, that was kind of the dynamic. You had Charlamagne, the left-wing pundit who could cook his co-host continuously. But now with Charlamagne becoming a more muted version of himself and Andrew Schulz evolving, doesn't look that way anymore. Also, throughout this debate, Andrew continues being objective. Even if he's putting on an act, at least that's how it appeared to me, and I think most listeners, though a lot of people do hate Andrew for other reasons. Charlamagne also makes another misstep here when he says that he might be middle class.
Wow. I think we might be middle class.
We might be.
I'm not even joking.
No, we might be.
I'm not even joking.
Based on a chart that Little Duval posted. So he's making an argument that I guess rich people now are middle class. And I think Charlamagne just looked crazy. I don't even think he should have said that. Because even amongst entertainers, Charlamagne looks nuts saying that. I mean, in the industry, it's commonly known that Charlamagne is doing really well for himself. You know, when I speak to people like Ian Dunlop on Spaces and other folks, everybody talks about how well Charlamagne is doing. And I know there's people way richer than Charlamagne, but I think he really seemed out of place when he said that. Then Andrew Schulz accuses Charlamagne of losing people with his Democratic rhetoric.
Who are we?
No.
He sounds... Yes, he does.
See, this is
Nikki Haley.
This is where you lose
Christie.
people.
After that, a back and forth occurs where I think Schulz outduels Charlamagne by bringing up how Democrats move people out in order to put people in that they want in power.
I understand that Democrats will rig the primaries. The Republicans...
Kamala won the primary.
Exactly. So the Republicans will not rig the primaries in the way that the Democrats. So they stole it from Bernie.
Specifically bringing up Bernie Sanders and how the Democratic Party coalesced around his opposition, Hillary Clinton at the time, to move him out and put her at the helm. And like I said, this isn't a show about politics. This video wasn't about politics. It's just more so about the debate the two men had. And then Charlamagne makes another misstep and sounds like a complete shill by saying that he likes that. He likes when people cheat.
The people's choice might be wrong. And if the people's choice is wrong, and you think you're going to lose in November, then you do what the Democrats did.
And he likes that when people do this. And he really did himself a terrible job of injustice. And I also noticed some more signs of Andrew's disinterest with constant yawns.
What going to do for the American people?
That's true.
You know what I'm saying? Like, she laid out her whole opportunity economic plan, told them how much money you're going to get if you're...
And I assume this was filmed in the morning because Andrew Schulz has a coffee next to him. So I'm kind of thinking, even from a scheduling perspective, Brilliant Idiots has to be terrible to schedule for these two men. These guys are busy. And not that they're like saving the world or anything, but they just got to do a lot of engagements. I mean, Schulz is a comedian. And then on top of that, Charlamagne is a mogul. So a lot is going on. Another thing I noticed this episode is that the edits of the episode seem heavily skewed towards Charlamagne's points. For example, anytime Charlamagne makes a point about Kamala Harris, they edit in a clip from the debate to reinforce his point, where that doesn't necessarily happen for Andrew Schulz. So I'm pretty sure that Andrew and Charlamagne, while they appear to be equals on this show, it seems as if Charlamagne calls the shots. And I think this is his IP, if I had to guess, because I remember listening to an episode of Loons, It's Up There, and what Charlamagne described was that he was the person who chose to have Andrew on the show, came up with the name. So sometimes I wonder, is like, did Charlamagne have Andrew sign some type of deal where they do the show for a long period of time? I also think when Andrew walks away, which I think he will he just replace Andrew Schulz with some other comedian, or maybe even do like a Addicts Media? It's a lot to be seen. And Brilliant Idiots also had another interesting episode, and it's its most recent episode, that they sidestepped the media firestorm that Andrew Schulz finds himself in as a result of the Shxtsngigs appearance that happened on the show, where Andrew Schulz made a comment about black women.
What is the black girlfriend effect? This is
you don't know
you
about
just
this.
glow up the other culture.
Yeah, so you'll see a guy who's had a black girlfriend, all of a sudden he's got buzz cut, like
Yeah.
clean shape up.
Yeah.
Glows up, bro.
Yeah, I like that.
They shave their hair because they start losing it. Because they're so stressed being around this black girl complaining about That's why they gotta shave their
Nah,
hair.
bro. White guys with black girlfriends,
They grow a
step,
beard
they step their
because
dick
there's
up.
more cushion when they get slapped the out of.
And then the Shxtsngigs people were castigated for allowing Andrew Schulz to go on this tirade or this rant and not interrupt him or check him live on air, with people like Damaris from the Rory and Maul podcast saying they should have swung on him. And this even forced Shxtsngigs to apologize. And then Andrew Schulz went on his podcast and made fun of the apology, or like deconstructed the apology.
Fight or flight is a real thing, and it's so not easy to say, but when you're in the situations, you look at it through a lens of like, bro, if it was me, I promise you I'll stand up, I'll kick them cameras down, I'll smack homeboy in the face, I'll say this, I'll do that. But when you're in there, you're in shock.
You're in shock, and all you want to do is move on.
Yeah, bro,
Pause.
move on is the fuck.
I've been there. I know what that's like. When you're just having fun and laughing with the boys, and you're like, I just can't wait to move on from this. Don't you know that feeling when you experience the fight or flight and then you just laugh? Does that happen to you guys when your body is just being torn with the primal urge to either fight or flight, and instead you just go, ha ha ha? Do you guys ever have that feeling?
So for the podcast Brilliant Idiots to avoid this whole topic, that's strategic. That was a discussion. That wasn't just like naturally they sat down on the pod and chose not to speak about it. I would assume at some point the two parties decided like, hey man, I don't want to talk about this. Or did Andrew say, I don't want to talk about this, I'm going to talk about this on air? Did Charlamagne want to avoid it because the two probably would have clashed? Because if you look at Charlamagne and his new retooled legacy after the case or the issue from his past, his thing is, you know, women. I support women, and I have daughters, and women are they the apple of my eye. So this rhetoric is particularly harmful to Charlamagne for them to be around each other. And I assume if Andrew keeps engaging in this type of stuff, this edgy humor that is at odds with Charlamagne's new legacy, well, not new now, but his continued rebrand, his long legacy rebrand, he will not want to be on the show with Andrew. Their brands are opposed to each other, and they're like trains going in separate directions, but they make content together. So this was kind of a video I wanted to do to talk about what this means for the future of the Brilliant Idiots brand. I mean, they're one of the Mount Rushmore of podcasting in this landscape, and by that I mean like what we consider like, I don't even like saying urban podcasting, but like city podcasting, you know, the East Coast, Northeast legacy to loudspeakers podcasting that were instrumental in creating that opinionated, sit down in front of the camera, chemistry podcast, the Desus and Mero stuff, the Joe Budden with Rory and Maul stuff. If this podcast ends, it'll be the end of an era. And I think the election cycle, this election cycle, might be what puts it over the top. I remember the exorcism of Andy Schulz, alt-right Andy. They kind of were at odds, and it seemed like Charlamagne was fed up with Andrew. And now I think this might happen again. I think we're seeing the part 2, and they might end. I mean, this, you know, Andrew reminds me of Lucky Luciano on Boardwalk Empire. Remember season 1, Lucky? Lucky was out here getting caught by the cops selling drugs, looking like a complete chump, looking like a moron, didn't know what to do. Then by the final season, Lucky was out here putting his you-know-what on the table, letting Nucky Thompson know, I mean business now, buddy. He was shooting at his henchmen. He was bugging out, letting them know that this is the new mafia. This is the new stuff we're doing. And Andrew Schulz, he's the new mafia. He's the new comedian. He's not the new comedian, but he's the one of the leads of that new movement trying to push an agenda of free speech and push against the boundaries of making people upset, making people angry. And I think that is at odds with what Charlamagne has become. And I still don't know how long this can last, both from a logistical standpoint and an ideological standpoint. All right, y'all. That's my video for today. Let me know what you think. Do you feel like Brilliant Idiots will last for a few more years? Do you think it will last for a long period of time? Or do you think the end is near and the election cycle, rhetoric, and Charlamagne's rebrand will cause an end? All right, that's my video for now. I got more content coming about the Joe Budden podcast. You know I'm always going to do that, but I had to take a dive into Brilliant Idiots land. Follow me on Instagram, The Stop TV. Follow me on Twitter, The Stop TV. Tap in with me on Reddit, Joe Budden Network. My name there is Cadius Band. If you just want to follow my Reddit profile, that's fine as well. This is Danny from The Stop. Peace.